Hi again, this is Vlad from Home Move. Welcome to the Tetris Academy. Today we're going to be looking at basic skills and principles for loading a truck, and we're going to also examine the load order and also how to tie in and secure specific items of furniture. The first thing that I will point you towards is our work guide. You can find this in our first day training manual and also in the Offsiders PowerPoint training manual. Now, what the work guide does is give us a typical example of the load order and the way a job should run for a standard residential job. I'll show you how to load and in what order we should load, and also in what order we should unload. So this is a great starting document. Familiarise yourself with this, and then on the last page it also gives you tips for loading a truck and then tips for loading specific items of furniture. Now let's look at some basic ideas to get you started with loading. So what is the typical loading order for a residential job? Well, first of all, we stack our boxes up, typically in one or two rows. If there's room on top, we'll put lighter things like cushions, bags of clothes, or maybe light plastic kids' toys. Then to hold those stacks of boxes in, you can put in mattresses or bed bases or square timber furniture. After the square timber furniture, we typically load larger items like couches or mattresses, dining tables, etc. And then towards the back of the truck, then we load our more fragile things like white goods and electricals. So that's your typical load order. Again, refer to the work guide, that will give you some more detail. Other principles: always try to pack straight tiers across the back of the truck, and I'd recommend tying each tier off. So you might have a row of boxes and you might want to tie that off with one or two straps, so you know that tier is independently safe and secure, even if the items in front of it fall. The second point is, if you're in doubt as to which item to load on next, I'd always go with the general rule of thumb: load the largest item first, because it's easier then to fit smaller items around a larger item. Other things to be aware of: greasy and dirty items such as pot plants, barbecues, outdoor furniture. Make sure that you load that well away from other things that can be easily stained, like white mattresses or fabric couches. Next, I'm going to talk about, just give you a few tips and pointers when it comes to blanketing items. My advice would be to blanket the whole item. So I would rather you stretch a whole blanket out and cover every surface of an item, rather than double fold it or quarter fold it and just cover like that. It's better to cover all surface areas than to cover just half or 2/3 of the areas really well. The other thing about blanketing and blankets as well, remember to ration your blankets. Always be aware of how many you have left. That can sometimes mean you use the one blanket to protect two different pieces of furniture, which can easily be done with chairs and bedside tables. Also, if you start to run out of blankets, then think about other things you can use, like pieces of cardboard, cushions, and other things, maybe even a t-shirt or a jumper that you have spare in the car to protect items for the day. So this is Vlad. This is my introduction to loading a truck, just a quick introduction. Now we're going to move on to how do you pack and secure particular pieces of furniture. When it comes to square wooden furniture, always want to make sure that the drawers are facing either into the back of the load or into the wall. So for example, if you have a stack of boxes at the back here, you want to make sure this drawer side is facing in, and then of course we're going to protect that fully with a blanket. If, however, those doors were glass doors or some very fragile doors, then you may want to consider that the boxes may not be as safe as facing the glass or the fragile doors into the wall and then tying off. So Today we're going to talk about how we secure fridges in a load on the back of the truck. Now remember, it's really important to protect the fridges. Even if you've got a layer of blanket on a fridge, if there's something hard near it and it bangs into it, it's still going to leave a dent, and your customers are going to see that dent for the next 5 years every time they go to get milk from the fridge and think of home move. So we've really got to make sure that these are one item that we protect well. So what's the best way to do that? Now typically we want to tie fridges in facing the wall, with the door facing the wall. Example of a time you wouldn't do that is if there are flimsy or fragile protruding plastic handles on the fridge, then you may want to make the decision to tie it in back facing the wall. But let's just say we're going to tie this one door facing the wall. So we get it in place, and then we grab our blanket. We're going to unfurl this blanket long ways, and we're going to wrap it around the fridge so it's covering as much of the fridge as possible, and if possible have an extra layer covering the door. Now, some of the trucks you may see large elastic and rubber bands. You can grab these off the wall and put them around the fridge. It's going to keep that blanket in place. What we want to do next, just for that extra added protection, is we're going to grab a second blanket and we're going to fold it long ways, like this. And then with that blanket we're going to drape over the top of the fridge, and we're going to get it to cover the full length of the door of the fridge. Go. So today we're going to talk about how do we load and secure a flat screen TV onto a removals truck. Now keep in mind, think about it from a customer's perspective. Flat screen TVs is one of the things on the load that they're going to care the most about. When we take phone calls from customers, probably the most popular question they ask is, how are you going to protect my flat screen TV? And I always tell them we have specific training and specific set procedures for transporting flat screen TVs and protecting them. And this gives them a lot of confidence, and I even explain this procedure to them. So first of all, when we're carrying flat screen TVs, we make sure that they're one of the last things that we put onto the truck, and we always carry them screen facing our bodies. Then when we load them onto the truck, we put a blanket down and up the wall to protect the stand, and especially a stand like this that you can see is a glass stand. And so we cover the TV in a single blanket, get it as close to the wall as possible, and then we cover it in another double blanket just over the screen section. And then we're going to tie that in securely. Sometimes you might have to use a triangle knot, or not going from a lower rung to a higher rung to keep it tied in securely. Sometimes you need to use two straps. Other things to keep in mind: sometimes you'll have a base of a TV that sticks out a long way. You always have some type of a gap there. Sometimes it's very long, sometimes it's shorter. So if you've got a TV that's on a wobbly stand, or if the stand sticks out a long way from the wall, if we try to tie that in on an angle, that stand's potentially going to break. So we want to make sure that there's a lot of padding. We've got the initial blanket, and then we've got the double blanket as well. But you may also want to use something like a group of boxes or a cushion from a couch to stick in there, just to give it that extra padding and take pressure where the stand meets the TV. Another thing that you can do is, as an alternative, get another blanket and scrunch that up and use that as filler and padding as well. So remember, with TVs, when you're taking them off the truck, make sure that they're one of the first things that you take off. That means they're out of the way, they're not going to trouble you anymore. Take them inside, again screen facing your chest, and place them down screen facing the wall. We don't want the screen facing out, because other people might be moving or walking around, they might back into it or knock something into it. So put them in a corner, screen facing the wall, keep them safe for the whole move. Now if there's one furniture item that I think people take for granted, and could protect a lot better. It's these wooden or timber, or perhaps even leather bed rails. You see some people have load removals trucks, and they'll put the timber to timber, or even worse, timber to timber on a truck, or they'll simply lay the rails over the top of other furniture. That's just not good enough. These timber rails are going to rub and scratch together, and as you can see, this one has already got a lot of scratch marks, not from home move of course, but perhaps from some other transporters. So today I'm going to show you how we can wrap these in blankets to protect them, and different ways we can think about loading them onto the truck. So firstly, I'd recommend doing this outside the truck before they're even loaded on. It's something that you can get an offsider to do while you're tying other items in. So lay your blanket down, long ways, lay your rails long ways, and just wrap each piece up individually. So they're nice and secure, protected, there's no wood on wood, there's no metal on metal. And then once we've got these nice secure wrap bed rails, there's lots of places you can put them. Sometimes you may have a gap along the floor, you can simply lie them on the floor. But my favourite place to tie these off is right on the back of the truck. At the very end, you usually have a small gap or small area. Simply stand them upright. Tie them off with the strap. You can even tie a bunch of 4 or 5 of them together. That usually keeps them out of the way, and it can solve what can be an awkward, cumbersome item to pack and load around other items.